Okay, now we're on to the final video, the number 10 through 1, of course, the top 10 games that I think are the best of all time. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start. Now, number 10 is going to be Hanabi by Antoine Bauza, and it's published by Asmodee Games, and it's made in 2010. Now, Hanabi, what Hanabi is, it's a cooperative game in which everyone is trying to make a set collection of, essentially. But the catch is that no one can see their own cards or tiles in this game, and they can look at other people's tiles and give other people clues. And everyone can see everyone else's stuff, except you can't see your own. And that's essentially what the game is. And you're basically just trying to get clues to figure out what you have in your hand so you can know what to play and when to play it. Now, Hanabi is, I love Hanabi so much, even though I've only ever beaten the game once, and I've played this game at least probably 100 times. I've only beaten it once. I still love Hanabi. It's my go-to co-op, essentially, whenever I'm trying to introduce people to cooperative games and they have never really played it before. Hanabi is my go-to. Hanabi is also my go-to for people that play games like Spades and other old school card games. Hanabi is my go-to game for getting them into board games. But Hanabi is such a fun game. It's super tough. I mean, there are ways in which you can meta the game, in which you can have certain signs and tells to let other people know and indicate certain things. I only play with one of them, which is that you always cycle things from the left to the right. So all of the oldest things are on your right side and all the new things are on the left side. That's the only rule I play with. But the thing is, I also play with so many new players all the time that I'm like the only person doing that at the table, and by the time everyone understands what I'm doing, the game's already over and we might have played one more, then they might kind of do it. But so Hanabi's a great game, especially if you can find people to play, the same group of people to play with all the time, so you can start understanding how people play and stuff. It's such a fun game. It's a classic. I love Hanabi. Hanabi is a game and I'll never leave my collection. And also, Hanabi is one of those rare games in which I would almost suggest no one to ever buy the regular version. Go out of your way, spend the extra, I think it's like 20, 30 bucks, and just get the deluxe version. Those little dominoes that you could lay down on the table instead of having to hold up the cards in your hand the entire time and make sure everyone can see it. Those just make all of the difference. It makes the game so much easier to play and so much more. I mean, like, you can at least get up and walk away and see, people can still see what you have in your hand. It's such a better way to play. It's one of those rare games which I say, don't bother with the regular version, just get the deluxe version. But that's number 10, Hanabi, love it. Now, number 9 is going to be Monikers, made by Alex Hughes and Justin Vickers, and it's published by Palm Court and it's made in 2015. Now, Monikers it's not the highest party game on this list actually, but it's definitely one of those party games in which I always bring it out. I always pull it out. It's a hilarious game. What Monikers is essentially Fishbowl, which if you don't know what Fishbowl is, what it is that you get a random assortment of cards, and it's a random assortment of things, like it's random things. And that's what I like about Monikers, is that it's a bunch of random funny things. It's also a lot of internet things, a lot of meme things, a lot of old school things as well. And they also give descriptions of what everything is. So you have no idea what it is, you can just read the description, eventually get what it is, or be reminded of what it is. But what you do with those cards is you make a deck. There's different ways you can make decks. I'll tell you how I make my deck in a little bit. And when you make a deck, essentially what's happening is you have two teams, and they can be as many people as you want. And the first round, each team is going to have a chance, like 30 seconds or a minute, to say, look at the card and try to describe to their team what that thing is on the card. And if they get it right, they count it as a point. And they try to go through as many cards as they can before the time runs out. Once the time runs out, they pass to the other team. The other team does the same thing. Then you keep passing the deck back and forth till you've gone through every single card in the game. Once you've gone through every single card in the game, you do the exact same thing over again. The only difference is in the second round is that you can only say one word. But because everyone kind of knows what everything is in the deck, it's a lot easier. And then you go through the entire deck again. Third time you go through the deck, you then just do charades. And it's such a funny game once you get to the charades part. Actually, the game's funny overall in general. But Monikers, it's just one of those games that keeps giving. It's one of those games in which every single time I pull it out, it's an hilarious time. The only time I've ever had a dud time playing Monnikers was the very first time I played it. And the only reason why I was a dud is, and this is why I changed how I draft the cards at the beginning, is because I didn't draft in a certain way. So people got a bunch of cards, they picked the cards, and then once everyone started playing the game, no one knew what any of the cards were. And if you knew what the cards were, it was just because you picked it, and you might have known only like 2 of the cards anyways. So a lot of people hate the game because they didn't know what cards were picked. But the way I do things now is I give everyone like 10 cards, and then I dump a bunch of cards in the center of the table, and I give everyone like a minute or 2 to make their best hand of cards. And then at the end of that, depending on how long I want the game, I'll take either 5 or 7 cards from everyone's hand, their favorite 5 or 7 cards, and I'll throw it into the deck and we make the game. Now, at that point, one thing is that it solves is that everyone has a lot of options. They have a lot of cards they can put in the game, and they like all of the cards as well. The other thing is that because the whole draft thing happens in the center, people can sometimes see some of the cards and potentially remember what cards are in the game or what kind of cards. They see the overall spread of what kind of random things are in the game, so they get an idea of what the game is and stuff like that. So it just helps out a lot. But that's how I go about it. And let me not talk more details about Monnikers, which is just a party game, but I love that game. Monnikers, my number 9 pick. Now number 8, to be honest, I was surprised this wasn't higher on the list when I made this, but this is just how it turned out. But number 8 is Twilight Imperium 4, made by Dane, Beltrami, konieczka, and Christian T. Petersen, and it's published by Fantasy Flight Games, and the Twilight Imperium 4 version came out in 2017. But yeah, I'm surprised this wasn't higher up on the list, if I'm being honest. But then when I look at my list, even now, it makes sense, I guess. But when I originally was making this list, I thought Twilight Imperium was going to be honestly within the top 3, but guess not. But what Twilight Imperium, what Twilight Imperium 4 is that it is a massive scale space opera board game, and it takes like it doesn't take an entire day anymore. It takes like 6 to 10-ish hours to play the game. It's a massive scale game. It's hard to describe because there's so many things you could do in the game. There's space battles, you could trade with other players, there's politics and laws that get put into place. Everyone's doing random objections and missions in the game and stuff like that. It's a fun game. It's I think if I was to think about it, the only reason why it's not rated higher for me is because I may have played it too much. And like, for example, Twilight Imperium 4, I got it when it came out at Gen Con, and I played that version of the game at least a minimum of 4 games. Minimum 4 games, and on top of that, I've taught about 5 or 6 games. So the game's been out for about a year and a half now, a year maybe, and I've already put the game on the table almost 10 times, which a lot of people struggle to even play that game once in their lifetime, and I've played Twilight Imperium 4 like 10 times already. So maybe that's the only reason, because it's a long game and it's a fun game, but I guess when you start playing it too much, that's when it starts to wear on you a little bit. But I love Twilight Imperium 4. I cannot wait until the expansions come out for that. 1, to add more players, because that'll just make it more intense and more fun. And 2, just to see all of the other aliens in the game and all of the other different modulars you could play. I had Twilight Imperium 3, and I had one of the expansions with it, but I never played it with any of the modules, just because I never played the game enough to also feel comfortable adding the other things. But I'm very comfortable with Twilight Imperium 4 now, to the point where I can add those modules the second I get them. So I can't wait till those come out. But that's my number 8, Twilight Imperium 4. All right, so number 7. This is a surprise. This surprise, 1, me when I made this list, and 2, this is probably gonna surprise a lot of people, considering that I've actually only played this game once, but it's that good of a game. And that game is This House is Haunted, made by Gabriel Gomez and is published by Brain Punch Games. It was made in 2014. Now, This House is Haunted. What This House is Haunted is, it's a board game that turns your house into the actual play area, I guess the best way to put it. And it's barely a board game, because it's part board game, part LARP kind of thing. But essentially what's happening is that there's 2 teams. There's the good guys and the bad guys. Everyone, if I'm not mistaken, is usually always a good guy when you start the game. And over the course of the game, you become a bad guy if you collect like these demon seals or whatever. Now what's happening is that you set up these decks in separate rooms in the house. You turn off all the lights. You obviously make sure you're playing in the dark. And you obviously want to try your best to play it in the biggest house you possibly can amongst your friends. And not only the biggest house, but also the house with the most ways around places. Like if there's a way to get outside and you could be on the first floor and second floor, that's super ideal. But what you're doing with these decks is that everyone is then assigned to go to a room. And everyone then goes to the room, and then they take a card from the deck. And the deck can sometimes contain things like good things like enchantments or victory points that are supposed to be used for the good guys to actually eventually end up winning the game. But what the decks also have are these cards that mess with you. Sometimes they're curses, which force you to do something for the rest of the game. And if you don't, there's probably some penalty that'll happen. Like for example, one of them had, actually I don't want to spoil anything because that's actually one of the problems with this game, which is why I've only played it once. But they'll make you do random things. Like if I was to think about off the top of my head, one curse card would make you have to run around like a cat for the rest of the game. Like you actually have to be on all fours when you're going anywhere and you have to walk like a cat to go to everywhere. I don't know, they could be something random like that. But then there's those curses, but then there's also these, I can't remember what they're called in the game. I can't remember what the in-game name is, but it's this, it's like a huge curse or something like that, or like you're punished or whatever. And what it does is it forces you to do something and you have to do that thing. For example, I don't want to spoil any in the game. This, like I said, I'm trying to make this as non-spoiler as possible. But let's say hypothetically, one says you have to stand in the middle of the room and you have to spin in a circle. And when someone walks in the room, you have to start singing Ring Around the Rosie. And if that person doesn't start spinning in the center of the room with you, then they are now cursed and they join you. And now when someone else walks in the room, there's two people spinning in a circle in the middle of the room singing Ring Around Rosie. And if they don't join you, then they keep getting caught up in the room. And things like that happen throughout the game. Now what happens is that imagine in that situation, one person's in the room spinning, singing Ring Around Rosie, and they have to do that whenever someone comes in. Now, what happens is that then everyone comes back to the center of the room. There's one room that everyone's located, and they have to then be like, okay, I got this card, I got this stuff. Oh no, now I'm cursed. I have to walk around like a cat for the rest of the game. And then like they'll be like, hey, where's John? Does anyone remember where we sent John? And these sort of funny things happen in the game because then someone's like, I think you sent John to the garage. So he must be stuck there cursed or something like that. So we need to go get John next game. And someone needs to go in there and figure out how to get him out. So these things progressively happen throughout the game. And if you have a lot of people, it gets so funny. If you have a big enough house, it gets just so ridiculous because it gets hard to remember where people were sent to where and where people are getting stuck. And you also, you end up with situations where, like, for example, I had a game where people were stuck in a bathroom. And the bathroom was not the biggest bathroom in the world. And there was like 4 people stuck in that bathroom. And then whenever someone came in, they had to do the cursed thing and they try to get them out. And they got them out eventually. But it's one of those games in which, one, it sucks because you can't play it a ton because of the amount of cards in the game. And once you see everything, and once you know all the curses and everything, then you know how to break them all. And it loses a lot of its flair. But it's such a it's such a good game to play for those moments. And it's one of those games in which I'm always gonna have this in my collection. It's gonna be one of those games in which I almost will probably at some point make it a tradition to play. Like if I have like a kids with family and stuff like that, it'll be to the point where I might even go crazy and start making my own cards for this game, unless if they start suddenly making expansions or this game gets picked up or something like that. But this House is Haunted. It's a game which I think everyone should experience. Unless if these kind of silly RPG, LARPing sort of things aren't your thing, which I'm honestly not really that big of a fan of, but I love this House is Haunted. And I think it's a game which everyone who this sounds intriguing to should definitely go out and get the game and play it sometime. The more people you play with, the bigger place you have to play with, the better. This is one of those games which I would honestly like get a bunch of friends and say, hey, let's rent out a barn and play this game sometime. It's that good, it's that fun. I played it once, and yes, it's my number 7. So once again, that's This House is Haunted, my number 7. Now, on to my number 6. Number 6 is, I was honestly, also this is another game I was expecting it to be higher, is Kingdom Death Monster, made by Adam Poots, and its publisher is Kingdom Death. It's made in 2015. Now, Kingdom Death Monster, the way to describe this game is just a brutal, very brutal survival RPG, like board RPG, dungeon crawl stylish kind of game. And what makes it so cool is that there's like the game's separated into 3 different parts. There's one is the hunt, where you're hunting down whatever you think is that you're chasing. And this part of the game is kind of just tacked on. It's not why you're playing the game. It's just something in which it could cause some random events as you're chasing down a monster. Then you have the monster fight, and the monster fights can be are sliced between something that's very fun or something that's I guess you could say it's not the most exciting thing ever, but it's what makes everything else important in the game and makes it so stand out and so ridiculous, and so you appreciate everything else that's going on in the game because they're so hard. And like your characters die all the time in the game, and they die all the time in these fights, so it makes it just that much more, everything else that much more bigger when you're doing things. But then after the fight, the best part of the game is the settlement phase, which is you're just building up your town, you're getting all new abilities, you're deciding the way your people are going to be running the place and how they're going to grow and adapt and survive, essentially. And it's where a lot of story elements come into play too, where you upgrade your weapons and everything. And I feel like I'm not selling this game all that well. It sounds almost like I'm just describing a generic dungeon crawl, but Kingdom Death Monster is just such a well done game, and I was honestly surprised by it because when I was first getting the game, I was initially getting it just because at the time I was collecting everything, and it's just one of those games in which I was like, oh, I gotta have it because I just gotta have it if you're missing out. But then when I played it, first off, the tutorial is like one of the best tutorials I've ever played in a game. I was able to sit there, play the game while reading the tutorial book, and I got 90% of the game, 95% of the game. It's actually, I'll be 100% honest, the tutorial in Kingdom Death Monster was so good that it's the main reason why I actually have yet to ever play Gloomhaven. And I have a copy of Gloomhaven in the basement right now, organized, assembled into a organizer and everything, and I have yet to play it just because the tutorial in Kingdom Death Monster was that good. And I'm not even joking, that literally is the reason. Because when I opened up Kingdom Death Monster, it taught me how to do everything. It taught me how to set up everything and to do everything in a very straight, cohesive, and nice manner. While I looked at the Gloomhaven book and it just didn't have that, hey, here's your first time playing, here's what you should be doing, and this is how you should be setting things up, sort of manner that Kingdom Death Monster had. And I mean, I looked at the videos as well, so it's not like I didn't understand Gloomhaven. It's not like I don't understand how to play games in general, but it was just a lot more intimidating, I guess the best way to put it. While Kingdom Death Monster was very welcoming in how to get everything up and running and set up. The only thing that was a little bit annoying was that you do have to assemble the miniatures. But Kingdom Death Monster, it's such a fun game, and it's so ridiculous. There's so much more depth into the game than I was expecting. There's a lot of writing. There's a lot of bookkeeping you gotta do in that game. There's literally no way possible you could play that game without a pencil. Playing with a pen is a nightmare. So, and I wasn't expecting that while I was playing the game. And then I played a couple sessions of it and I fell in love with it. And I was just like, man, this game is just so in depth. There's so many different things you could do. There's so many crazy little abilities you could get and little notes you got to keep of every single character. And even though characters come and go off, and it's like, there's just so many things you got to keep up with. And it's such a fun game. But Kingdom Death Monster, I love the game. I mean, if you could get over, there are problems with the game. I'm not even gonna deny it. It's extremely sexual. In ways, there are times in which like I'll go through a few sessions where nothing sexual happens, but when it is, it's extremely sexual, and it's a very frowned upon thing, because while some of it makes sense, like for example, there are things revolving around like having birth in it, the settlement, stuff like that, except it gets a bit sometimes too graphic in terms of the art that they use and stuff like that. But if you could get over that, and if you get past that, and if you could almost ignore it, because those things, honestly, it's not something that I'm into at all, and it's not something that is a positive for me. But just the amount of things that they do actually have involved in that actually go into actual gameplay is actually very well done, how they do things like that. I don't want to spoil it. Actually, I'll spoil one thing. Like for example, when you have the first childbirth in the community or settlement or whatever, they talk about how to raise the kid. And like they go through two different ways you can raise kids. You can either start raising kids where you nurture them and you raise them and everyone's happy and stuff like that, and every kid gets a chance and everything. But when you do that, the kids naturally grow up weaker and they're just normal people when they grow up. Or you could take the like Spartan approach where only the strong survive, and once a kid's basically born, they're on their own and they're just trying to survive on their own. Now the survival rate in that situation is like ridiculously low, but anyone that survives is like instantly like one of the best characters in the game. So it's like when those things happen, and there's some things that are like adult and sexual and stuff like that, but they actually make it work with the gameplay where it makes sense, but it's weird. You have to see it for yourself, but I still love the game. Kingdom Death Monster, it's actually the only game I actually play solo, and I love it so much. But that's number 6, Kingdom Death Monster. Number 5 is going to be Risk Legacy, made by Rob Daviau and Chris Dupuis, and it's published by Hasbro Games. It was made in 2011. I'll try to make these a little quicker because I just realized that I am killing so much time talking about each of these games individually because I like them so much. But Risk Legacy is Risk. And it's also the first iteration of a legacy format game in which you're playing the same game multiple times, hopefully with the same people. And the game just develops and everyone gets new abilities, countries get new abilities, things happen, storylines happen that change things on the board and everything. And I haven't even finished Risk Legacy. I think I'm halfway through my campaign with friends, except then, of course, everyone moved and scattered to the 4 corners of the earth. I'm not even joking. One of the players, he moved to Europe. 2 of the other players, they went to California, and the other player, he's still around here. So I haven't even finished it. I'm waiting for everyone to come back so we can finish the campaign, but I love Risk Legacy. We're about halfway through the campaign. It's just so much fun, the different things you can do in the game. It's my favorite Legacy campaign so far. And the weird thing is that it's one of the least tacked on Legacy games I've played so far, besides Werewolf Legacy, which was a fairly tacked on Legacy component. Risk Legacy it's not as strong as Pandemic Legacy in the Legacy aspect, but the gameplay itself, one, they fixed Risk. They made it so it's not a 10-hour game, it's a 1.5 to 2 hour game, which Risk should be essentially. And the things they add to the game are just so fun. And they're just so like, they're just little abilities here and there, which make you like, oh man, that's so crazy how now that guy could do this thing. Now we got to worry about him and stuff like that. But I love Risk Legacy. I can't not wait. They need to make a season 2 of Risk Legacy. Even though I'm not even finished with the first one, but they need to make a second season. But I love Risk Legacy. It's such a fun game. I suggest it for anyone. If there's anyone out there that plays dudes on a map games or area control games with the same group of people, get Risk Legacy. It's a fantastic game. But that's number 5, Risk Legacy. Now, number 4. If people have been following me for a while, this one's going to come as a surprise as to how low this one is. But number 4 is actually going to be Kemet, made by Jacque, Bariot, and Guillaume Montage, and it's published by Madigo Games. It's made in 2012. Kemet, for a very long time, easily was my top game ever made. I loved it. Everything that came out for it. It's the game in which I probably have pimped the most, and the game in which I probably put into the most amount of work making my own expansions for the game. I took 2 expansions that I found online, redesigned them completely, then also did all the graphics for them, printed them out and made them, and then I also made my own expansion as well. It's the game in which I spent the most time doing extra stuff for the game. I should send those things over to Madigo, see if they would make these expansions. But I love Kemet. It's the game in which, out of all these area control dudes on the map games, I've easily played the most. I don't even want to know how many games Kemet I've played. It's a minimum of 60 plus games. Minimum. That's like lowballing it, is probably 60 plus games. And it's just a game which I love it so much. But the only thing is, I played it too much. So that's why I dropped for number 1, and now it's at number 4. It's a game in which nowadays I'll still play it here and there, but I'm not always itching to play it. But I haven't played it with the brand new expansion. I have the new expansion, I haven't touched it yet. So I would actually still be interested in playing that and trying that out. But Kemet, I love Kemet. It's the best area control dudes on the map game that has ever been made. Nothing has topped it. The combat in it is just so streamlined. It's so well done. The way that you can get abilities and powers in the game is just so streamlined and so ridiculously good. No game has topped it. Like, the amount of crazy combinations you could do in the game is just crazy. And I love that the entire progression of me playing the game from 1 game to 60 games, I've always like had like thoughts of like, oh, what's overpowered, what's too strong, and what's this, what's that. And it's always changed. That has never happened in a game with me playing it that much, where, because with some games, I'll play it a certain amount and I'll figure out the game, and then that will never change. That will never change, but that has always constantly changed the Kemet. It's actually to the point now where me and my friends have played it a ton. We think, like, for example, the blue elephant is by far the strongest card in the game at its power level, at its price, and people that play the game once or twice would never assume that. But it's just, that's just how crazy the game has gotten, and I wouldn't be surprised if that idea changed if I played it 5-6 more times. But number 4 is Kemet. I love the game. If you like area control, dudes on the map style games, or just being able to have different powers in the game and stuff like that, best game out there. Get it. It's easily one of my favorite games of all time. But that's Kemet, number 4. Now, number 3 is, I was surprised that this beat out a lot of games, but I'm also not surprised at the same time. Number 3 is One Night Ultimate Werewolf, made by Ted Alspach and Akihisa Okui. It's published by Bezier Games. It's made in 2014. Now, the reason why One Night Ultimate Werewolf is so high up on the list is, 1, I love social deduction games. I will never turn down a social deduction game, almost ever. Almost doesn't even matter what the game is almost at this point. But when it comes to One Night Ultimate Werewolf, I will 100% never turn down a game of One Night Ultimate Werewolf. It's just one of those games that I always get to the table. I'm always down to play. It's one of those games in which, to this day, I don't mind it if I sit down and play a game of it, and then I sit there and I do nothing but play One Night Ultimate Werewolf for like a straight hour and a half, 2 hours. There's just so many characters in the game now. There's so much variety in the game now. People play the game so much now that everyone understands the roles, understand how to lie, and even new players can get it because there's enough people that know what they're doing that they can kind of show them the ropes over time. It's just such a fun game. I don't know. There's not much more I could say about One Night Ultimate Werewolf that besides that it's just a great social deduction game. The only problem I have with One Night Ultimate Werewolf, and it's a very small problem with it, is that people suggest it as a gateway game. I don't think it's a gateway social deduction game at all. Unless the people are into gaming, then yeah. But if you're just trying to find non-gamers and try to get them into gaming, don't show them One Night Ultimate Werewolf. If you're going to show them any sort of social deduction game, show them Insider, show them Fake Artist Goes to New York. One Night Ultimate Werewolf is not that game. I made a whole video about this, but the things I got on that real quickly was that if you're gonna play the game right and actually make it a fun game, then you gotta add the interesting roles in the game. But when you add the interesting roles in games, it makes the game harder to play for newbies. But if you then say, oh, well, just add a lot of villagers in the game, the problem with adding a lot of villagers in the game is that then the people that don't know how to play the game get the villagers, they don't know what to do because they don't have any information, they don't know how to talk to anyone, they don't know what to lie about or what to tell the truth about. So then they just end up just sitting there not doing anything. So it's a flaw for new gamers that are not used to social deduction games. But for people that play social deduction games, it's awesome. I love it. That is number 3, One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Okay, so, all right, looks like we are working and everything's up and running. So just to explain some things if you're wondering, the other cut that I have of my number 2 pick, the camera randomly cut off and it came back on halfway through my video, and then it continued for the rest of the countdown. So I actually had to redo this part. I was downstairs editing this video right now, and all of a sudden I'm over here having to record it. Now if you're wondering, hey Gary, why are you outside? Well, I'm editing at 1 a.m. and I don't feel like recording inside and bothering my roommates at 1 a.m. even though they probably wouldn't hear me, but I'm not going to take that risk. Granted, they could probably now hear me through their windows, but it's also winter, which is why it's freezing out here. So the windows are probably closed. And then the other question is why, Gary, is there a stupid red light shining on you right now? Well, I don't know. I live in coyote areas and there's deers out here and stuff like that, and there's an occasional bear, and I think they don't like red lights. But I also just like having red lights, and I felt like having it, so leave me alone on that, I guess. But anyways, to my number 2. Number 2 is going to be Secret Hitler, made by Mike Boxleiter and Tommy. This is red lights like fusing into my eyes so I can actually barely read this. Tommy Maranges and Max Temkin. It's published by Goat Wolf and Cabbage Games. It was made in 2016. Now, Secret Hitler, it's a social deduction game if you've never heard of it. The best way to describe it is very similar to Resistance Avalon, but with a few more mechanics on it that make all the difference. But essentially what it is, if you don't know what Resistance Avalon is, it's 2 teams, good guys, bad guys, fascists, liberals, and the liberals and fascists basically, they don't know who's on each other's team, and they're basically trying to enact policies by sending people on missions, and then they enact the policies as they go on the missions. The liberals are trying to fill up all of their liberal policies, while the fascists try to fill up all their fascist policies. And on the side, the liberals are also trying to kill Hitler, while the fascists are also trying to elect Hitler as chancellor. That's another win objective for both teams. But I just love the game so much because it's just so open-ended in how you can lie and how you can play out things. And also the deduction in the game, I like a lot more than Resistance and a lot more than a lot of other social deduction games. The only thing that the game's missing, in my opinion, is just more rolls. I mean, like, come on, guys, make an expansion, and I'd get that in a heartbeat. But I love Secret Hitler. It's just a fun game to play. It's just a game I'm always down to play, and I'm always down to play for hours at a time. Very similar to One Night Ultimate Werewolf, but even more so when it comes to Secret Hitler. I mean, but of course the theme is very off-putting, and a lot of people would look down on it and frown upon it, and I don't blame them. It's a game I also can't play in public that much. I mean, you can't be just in the middle of a game store or anywhere in public just yelling out, calling people Hitler and fascists and stuff like that, especially not nowadays. But it's such a good game. And I mean, what I'm actually going to cut into next is I'm actually going to show you the version I made. Well, I didn't make it, I didn't design or anything like that. I just found a version online and I just printed it out myself. But I like the game so much that it's like the second most game I've pimped out, because I wanted to play it out in public. So I made like these I made a Voldemort and a Harry Potter version of it, so I can actually play it out in public. And actually, to be honest, people actually seem to like those. I mean, even though knowing the original theme and not minding the theme, most people actually seem to enjoy the Voldemort and Harry Potter themes. So I mean, Max Temkin, if you're listening to this, I highly suggest that you get those licenses, because we all know you have the money for it, and redesign the game with those themes, because you could probably make a killing off of that, even though you're still probably making a killing off of Secret Hitler anyways. But anyways, we're going to cut into that next video. But is there anything else I want to say? Because the next video is just talking mostly about the thing that I pimped out, but nah, I can't really think of anything else. Secret Hitler is a great game. Play it. Now check out this box I made.
Okay, and I'm back. Now, remember how I said that the theme is very off-putting, and I can see people not enjoying the theme, or even not even giving the game a shot because of the theme? I've actually ran into a bunch of people because of that. I like this game so much that I saw these designs online, and I decided to make my own copy of both Secret Sith and also Secret Voldemort. So if you're someone who actually enjoys Secret Hitler and you want to actually be able to play it out in public and stuff like that, I would highly suggest making these versions of the game. You don't have to go crazy like me and get a box and all this other stuff. Granted, this box is just a box I got from Michael's, and I painted it black, but then I had to paint out the logos and stuff. But I love this version. I mean, the cards you get in the game and everything are just, I got these made from, where did I get these made? Can't remember what site I got these made from, but they have all the designs online. You could just go out, download the files for it, and make it yourself. The only thing you may have to double check for is that I did get these play mats custom made, but I had to do also with these play mats, I had to like redesign it so that I could just have one play mat for everything. I don't have to have like 3 different play mats for all the 3 different player accounts or whatever. But that's why I like this game so much. That's just to prove how much I like this game and why it's my number 2. I went out and made this whole version of it so I could play it out in public, so that I could avoid people looking at me suspiciously whenever someone's yelling who's Hitler and who's a fascist and stuff like that. Instead, it's who is Palpatine and who is a Sith or a what is it in this version of the game? I can't remember. I know in the Voldemort, it's like who's a Phoenix and who's the Phoenix and who's the what's the other thing? You're not Voldemort, you're not a Phoenix, and you are not. This is such great. You're not a Death Eater. That's what it is. I'm a horrible Harry Potter fan, apparently. So, I would highly suggest if you like the game, go out and make these versions for yourself. It's fantastic. It allows you to play it out in public and stuff like that. But that's why I like the game so much, is that I actually went out and made it. So that's my number 2, Secret Hitler. Now, my number 1 pick of all time. This came as a huge surprise to me because, I mean, when I was looking at other games like Kemet, Twilight Imperium 4, Kingdom Death Monster, those are actually the 3 I thought was going to be my number 1. But then when I did this all out, this game was number 1 and I was surprised. But my number 1 is Codenames, made by Vlaada Chvátil. It's published by CGE. It's published in 2015. Now, this was a surprise to myself, and I was almost going to reorder my list, but then when I kept thinking about it, and I kept thinking about trying to reorder the games and trying to switch them out and see which one's actually the number 1, Codenames kept being number 1. And the reason why is one, Codenames is such an important game to me. First off, if you don't know what Codenames is a party game in which there's 2 teams and each team has a set of words that they're trying to figure out on a 5x5 grid. And one person on each team actually knows what all the words are and they're trying to guide their team to their words. That's essentially what the game is. But the thing is with Codenames, the reason why it's such an important game to me, first off, it's that game in which all of my non-gamer friends now own. They literally all now own a version of Codenames. I actually just had one of my best friend's girlfriends come up to me, and because I was getting rid of a bunch of my games, I was getting rid of my Codenames Disney and my Codenames Marvel, and she was like, hey Garrett, I love Codenames. I'd love to have it in my classroom. Can I buy those 2 versions off you so I can have them in my classroom? I was like, yes. All of my non-gamer friends love Codenames. It's that game in which I've actually been able to convince them all to slowly like over the past, 3 years. And now it's to the point where I didn't tell them to or anything. They just all own it. And that's actually very important to me because, I mean, I have a lot of gamer friends, but I also have a lot of non-gamer friends that are not interested in board games at all. And for me to see all of them gravitate over a single game and they all love it, whenever we're out, if we're bored or something like that, or if we're like all having a dinner together, whatever, usually by the end of the night, we're playing Codenames. And it's just such a fun game. I love it for that reason alone. The other reason why I love Codenames is that it's a game in which I've been able to get my family involved in the game. My family loves the game. It's just, and not only that, it's a game which I would never say no to. If someone says, hey, do you want to play a game of Codenames? I honestly will never say no. And it's not one of those games which I'm sitting there and I'm playing with non-gamers or I'm playing with random people and I'm not enjoying myself. I'm always having a great time with Codenames. It just brings out those situations with people and those funny situations, and it's also very thought-provoking, and it's just also one of those party games which you're also thinking to a decent amount during it. I'm not saying it's like a brain tease or anything like that, but you're always, if you're the person giving the clues, you're thinking a lot about the clues you're giving. You think about the people you're playing with, and it's a fun game. I love Codenames. It's that party game in which I just think it's honestly that party game which I think everyone should own. In my opinion, I feel like Codenames should be in everyone's houses. I do a lot of freelance work now, and whenever I run into people, funny thing is somehow through freelancing, and through businesses, stuff like that, people now know me as the board game guy. And the reason why is because when I actually do go out to meetings and networking events, stuff like that, I actually do bring out board games. And whenever they always ask me, hey, what's one game I should get people? It's always has actually been Codenames. And that just then escalated that game up for me. And as I've noticed it over the past year, and when I was making this list, there's a reason why I suggest it for everyone. And I just love Codenames that much. People might overlook it, or they might think like, oh, Vlaada Chvátil has other better games out there, which not gonna deny he has other more thought-provoking and bigger games out there. And people might think like, oh, a party game shouldn't be your number one game, but I don't know. Codenames is just that important to me. It's that good of a game, and I think it honestly deserves to be my number one pick. The other games out there I can't suggest for everyone. Kemet I can't suggest for everyone. If you're not into aggressive games or you're not into attacking games, I can't suggest it for you. Kingdom Death Monster, 100% not for everyone. There's a very small group of people I'll suggest Kingdom Death Monster for, but that small group of people are going to absolutely love the game. Twilight Imperium 4, not for everyone. That is a very long game. But Codenames, I can easily suggest that for everyone. And out of my entire time playing the game and enjoying the game and teaching people the game, I've honestly maybe have ran into 3 people that thought the game was okay or just solid. Everyone else has absolutely loved the game. And this is not a small amount of people I'm teaching to. I've easily taught at least 200 people how to play Codenames, I think. And that's different people. And it's just such a good game. One I suggest for everyone. Avoid the Marvel and the Disney versions like the Plague. In my opinion, they're horrible. The Marvel version has way too many random characters in it. Unless if you are a fanatic and you have a bunch of fanatic friends that read all the comics and they know all the things, then yeah, get it. But if you don't, then don't get the Marvel version. The Disney version just boils you down to, I don't know, it's weird. It's almost too easy and you can't make too many clever things because of how things are not different enough. I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. But the regular version, fantastic. Pictures, solid. Duet, fantastic. The Underdark or Undercover version, the dirty version of it. Hey, I'm sorry Dice Tower people, I love that version too as well. But I don't know, Codenames, I love the game. I suggest everyone get it. And it's my number one pick, Codenames. So now that is finally over, that was my 10 through 1. What did you think? Did you expect those games to be on that list at all? Was you expecting as many social deduction games? Was you expecting Codenames be number 1? I mean, I surprised myself with that one, to be honest, after I made this list, but it just made sense. I'm sorry. But let me know in the comments down below what you think of my 10 through 1. And hopefully Tom never asked me to do these top 100 things again. I don't know how they do this every year. It's crazy. For you guys watching these videos and you're like, oh man, I could do this top 100 videos thing as well. Maybe. It's tough. I don't know how those guys do it every year. It's crazy. I could never give them more credit for being able to do that now, because doing this one time for me, absolutely exhausting, and I might never do it again. But it was still fun at the same time. But until next time, guys, thank you for watching my top 100 videos. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something. And until next time, peace. Wait, are you trying to tell me you only get one sheep for all of your sheep instead of getting one sheep per pair, which actually makes sense? Hello?
Hi, Gary? Yeah, it's Dan here, yeah.
Dan? Wait, Core's dad's Dan, right? Is that right?
Cora's dad, yeah. Yeah, listen, man, that was really quite good. That was really quite good. Educational, informative. Let us get to know you as a person.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
I really enjoyed it. Well done. Why didn't you do all that kind of stuff from the start?
Yeah, but I don't know why I didn't do that from the start. That would have been a million times easier than doing everything else. But yeah, it's a really good question. But anyways, when are you doing your top 100? I mean, is that dropping like you gonna be doing it next year? Are you another stretch goal? Are you gonna? Because I'll throw money at that stretch goal, Dan.
Me? No. After seeing what you've been going through to do, I've got no interest. To be honest, I've never really wanted to do a top 100 anyway.
Well, you're joking, right? You're joking, right? Right, Dan, you're joking? Dan, did you hang up? Dan? Hello? You're joking, right? Dan, wait. He really hung up on me. Dan, you're joking, right?